Most people ignore this.
Not because it's complex, because it's quiet. Showing up doesn't feel powerful. It doesn't feel like progress. It feels neutral. No breakthrough, no visible shift. Nothing that signals this is working. So the mind looks elsewhere. For intensity. For something that feels like movement. But real progress doesn't feel like that. It builds through repetition, through consistency, doing the same thing when nothing is telling you to continue. That's where separation starts. Not in effort, in stability. Because most people are not inconsistent in ability. They're inconsistent in behavior. They act when they feel motivated. They stop when they don't. They push when results appear. They disappear when they don't. So their output breaks. And when output breaks, nothing compounds. Nothing stacks. That's what consistency actually does. It allows accumulation. Small actions stacking over time. But stacking requires continuity. And continuity requires showing up when it feels unnecessary. That's the part people avoid, not the work, the repetition. Because repetition feels slow. It feels like no progress, like you're in the same place. But the change is internal, in structure, not in visible results. Your perception sharpens, your reactions stabilize, your execution improves. None of that looks dramatic. It doesn't create a moment. It creates a base. And a base stays invisible until something is built on it. That's why it feels like nothing. Most people need confirmation. They need results. They need feedback, something that tells them to continue. But showing up gives none of that. It gives silence. No validation, no external signal, just repetition. And that's why it works. Because it filters people, not by skill, but by tolerance. Tolerance for silence, tolerance for slow progress, tolerance for no return. Most people don't have that. So they leave, they reset, they switch, over and over, never staying long enough for anything to build. But the ones who stay, who keep showing up without needing it to feel important, they build something different. Not intensity, not speed. They build reliability, a pattern that doesn't break, that doesn't depend on mood. And over time, consistency outpaces everything else. Because it doesn't stop. And that quiet continuation is where the real power starts.
If this message resonates with you,
Like and subscribe for more content like this. This channel is built for people who want control over their focus, not constant noise.
The shift doesn't happen in one day.
It happens in accumulation. Small, repeated actions, stacking without interruption. And at first, nothing about it feels different. You show up, you do the work, and externally, nothing changes. That's where most people lose it, because they expect feedback, some kind of confirmation. They want to feel progress. They want to see movement. They want something to validate the effort. But consistency doesn't reward you immediately. It delays everything. And that delay creates doubt. It starts to feel like you're wasting time, like nothing is building, like the effort isn't translating. So people look for alternatives, something faster, something more visible. They change direction, adjust too early, or stop completely. And that resets the process. back to zero, every time. Because consistency only works when it's uninterrupted, not perfect, unbroken. That's the difference. You don't need intensity, you need continuity, showing up again and again, even when the previous day gave you nothing. Because what's building isn't visible yet. It's forming beneath the surface, in structure. Your timing improves, your decisions get cleaner, your execution becomes automatic, and eventually, that starts to show. Not suddenly, but clearly. You move faster, not because you rush, because you hesitate less. You recognize patterns earlier. You act with less friction. You waste less time deciding. And from the outside, it looks like progress appeared, like something clicked, like you suddenly improved. But nothing sudden happened. You just didn't stop. You stayed through the silent phase, while others left, while others reset, while others waited for confirmation. So when results begin to show, you're already ahead, not by effort in that moment, but by time invested when nothing was visible. That's the advantage. Time that wasn't interrupted. Because consistency builds momentum, and momentum reduces resistance. It makes continuation easier, but momentum only exists if you didn't break the cycle, if you didn't stop early, if you didn't leave when it felt pointless. That's why showing up matters, not for what it produces today, but for what it compounds over time. Each day adds almost nothing, but together they create something that can't be matched quickly. And once that builds, it's difficult to stop, because now the system is carrying you. Not motivation, not emotion, structure, habit. And that's when it shifts from effort to identity. You're no longer trying to show up. You just do, without negotiation.
At the highest level,
It becomes invisible again, but for a different reason. Not because nothing is happening, but because it's now normal. Showing up is no longer a decision. It's no longer something you debate. It's built into how you operate. There's no friction, no internal resistance, no need to convince yourself. You don't ask if you should do it. You just move. Because that's the standard now. And this is where the real separation happens. Not when you start, when you stop needing a reason. Most people still rely on something external, motivation, urgency, pressure, something that pushes them into action. But when showing up becomes internal, it no longer depends on any of that. It happens regardless of how you feel, regardless of the environment, regardless of whether it's rewarding. And that consistency creates something most people never reach. Predictable output, stable execution, not occasional performance, but sustained performance, without interruption. And over time, that stability compounds. It sharpens everything. Your timing, your awareness, your decisions. So when opportunities appear, you don't hesitate. You don't second guess. Because you've already built the habit of acting, of executing, of following through. And that's what makes it powerful. Not the act itself, but what it turns you into. A system that doesn't break. A pattern that continues. A standard that holds. While others fluctuate, you remain consistent. While others reset, you continue. And over time, that gap becomes undeniable. Not because you moved faster, but because you never stopped. That's the quiet power. Not dramatic, not visible at first, but relentless. Built in repetition, strengthened in silence, proven over time. And once it's established, it doesn't fade, because it's no longer effort. It's who you are. It's how you operate, without needing to think about it. Here's a slightly stronger one without breaking tone. If this made sense, like the video and subscribe for more.